Welcome everyone. Very glad to be with you with this big group this afternoon. I'm going to start with sharing my screen so that you can see my PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully you can all see it. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here because it's an important topic, because hopefully if you, you feel a little bit more comfortable with working with your Dutch colleague, you will be a little bit more comfortable in your work environment as well and in your life, generally speaking. So it's a small contribution, but hopefully with a important impact. We have 45 minutes, so it's pretty short. I hope you you don't expect that I'm going to cover everything because we have 45 minutes. So it's going to be a few things, but hopefully some instrumental things that you can use in your day-to-day. And we're going to try to keep it as interactive as possible with the chat and with Paul, but for time reason, we cannot take too much questions or live intervention. But for the end, hopefully, we'll have a little bit of time for the question. So let's start. And I'm very curious to hear where you are from. So if you would like to share with us where you are from in the chat, we already heard Christina, who was in Sweden, and some others, but please let us know. And of course, it's not always easy to say where you are from, because sometimes you feel you are from different places, but maybe quickly where you feel you belong the most, let's say. So we have a few people from the Netherlands, Sweden, as we said, Thailand, Peru, woohoo! Whoa, this is nice. Argentina, wow, quite a few people from the Netherlands again, New Zealand, Sweden, oh, pretty international. And we heard that some people are in the Netherlands and some people are still outside of the Netherlands. So this is really nice, a real multicultural gathering over here. So thank you very much. Another quick question for you, ladies and gentlemen. So you're joining a webinar, which is about how to work with the Dutch. And I'd like to know, again, in the chat quickly, why is it important for you to know how to navigate cultural differences at work? Why is that important for you? Let's see a few of your motivations here. So please, in the chat. Okay, so Alice is working with many different nationalities. Benefit of cultural diversity. Yes, of course, we are all becoming aware of that actually having people who think and act differently is actually quite a bit of a strength and an asset for teams. Great. Lots of employees are not Dutch, so that's also important to see that from that perspective. And of course, to be able to understand each other and to be able to have more fun with each other. That's also really important, of course. Yeah, so thank you for all these answers. And of course, the goal is to understand each other better, to collaborate better with each other, and ultimately to have more fun and to be more effective. So a lot of very good reasons to try to understand a bit better what is, the cultural Dutch etiquette, more or less. Another quick question before we dive in the topic. I see one person, Lena, welcome. If you would like to, for reasons of, technical bandwidth and everything, if you could just, and also because we are recording, if you could just switch off your camera. So thank you very much. So another question for you guys. This is going to be the first poll of this session. I'm going to open it now. Can you see it? No, probably you can't see it. But so let's in the chat again. Where you're at work, and probably hopefully some of you already work with Dutch people or international people. Where do you see the main differences when you compare with your own culture? So would it be about the male-female relationship, the hierarchy? What is it about? Decision making? So you see it, it's on the screen. And I am reading in the chat at the same time. So relationship is an important one. What else do we have? All of the above. Great. A lot of decision making, right? Relationship between colleagues. Yes, so relationship is interesting. Relationship is decision making is coming back many times. It's interesting because here we have some similar answers, but very often when I ask those questions, when we have people coming from different countries, we have very different answers. And why is that? It's simply because depending on where you're coming from and depending on your reference, you're going to find things weird or surprising, different things weird or surprising. Because if you come from Japan or if you come from Brazil, what's going to surprise you about the Netherlands is not going to be the same thing. So this is the very first thing which is important about culture, is to understand that everything is relative. So it's not so much looking at one culture itself, but more to compare one culture to the other, to see where are the differences. So this was the reason for this first question. And all the topics are actually very interesting. We're not going to dig in all those topics, but as a French person, I didn't mention that, I'm French originally, I can tell you that I can see differences on all those aspects when I compare with the French culture. The other important thing I want to share with you before we really focus on the Dutch working culture is that when we talk about culture, very often people feel a little bit sensitive, because you are talking about them, about their identity. Let's be very clear on this. We are not going to talk about stereotypes, and we are going to talk about trends, and we're going to talk about norms that we see in a group, the group of the Dutch people. But of course, it doesn't mean that we are putting people into boxes, and it certainly does not mean that every single Dutch person you're going to meet is going to fit exactly within the norm and the trend that we're going to discuss. So please be very much aware that you cannot predict someone's behavior or someone's beliefs or values only on his national culture. So it's very important to be aware of that. We have many different layers that influence us, our national culture, but also our, your family, maybe your education, your profession, all of this, your history, your experiences, your personality, all of this is also playing a role. So be very careful with that. We cannot predict an individual behavior only based on his cultural origin. So this was the other precaution I wanted to take before we go further. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about the egalitarian aspect of the Dutch culture. We're going to talk about the time, and we're going to talk about communication, and of course, how they impact the work environment. So let's start with egalitarian culture. What do we understand by that? In the chat, please. What could that be, egalitarian culture? So let's see what you get. I hear one person has not switched off his microphone, so please make sure that you do. Everyone is equal, no hierarchy. Yes, treat everyone the same way. Equal rights and opportunity. Voicing opinion. Great, that's it. Manager, coach, or expert. Great, Christina. We already have some very specific answer. This is fantastic. So that's it. In an egalitarian culture, we expect and we accept that all people have the same right and privileges, the same power. So we don't expect and accept that there is a difference between the people. So this is what we talk about when we talk about egalitarian culture. So in a minute, we're going to see how that impacts the work environment. And you guys already gave some great answers, when it impacts the decision-making process, impacts the way we're going to lead people. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about in a minute. But before that, I would like to show you a small video. There is no sound, but it's on purpose because it's in Dutch, and I'm not sure if you all speak Dutch, but it's more for you to focus on the interaction. It's a video that went viral on the internet a couple of years ago. So maybe some of you recognize the guy on, maybe both guys, but we are focusing on the guy on the right side. Who is this, this gentleman? Anybody in the chat or maybe off the microphone? Mark Rutte, yes. He is the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. He has been for quite a long time. We're not doing politics over here. We are just observing cultural examples. And this is a great example of egalitarian culture. So let's see. Okay, so we're going to stop it here. And I would like to ask just one person quickly to come on microphone and tell us what he or she saw. Real quick, would like to describe the scene. Can I ask someone if nobody is volunteering? Let's see, Christina, can I ask you?
Okay, I think it's a great example of the Dutch egalitarian style, how he has to clean up after his own mess. Nobody does it for him. So, yeah.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Christina. And thank you for being brave and come on the microphone at this big group. Yes, indeed. So the Prime Minister is cleaning up in his own mess. So he spilled his coffee and he cleans it up afterwards. So I'm not going to ask you, but in the chat, but for yourself, can you picture your own Prime Minister, your own president doing the same? I can tell you that I can't. It would be extremely weird and surprising. So this is, as Christina said, this is a great example of egalitarian culture. So this was a little bit far from the work environment. So let's focus again on work and working with the Dutch. So real quick in the chat again, what do you expect from a manager? In the chat. And I see some interesting comments in the chat, by the way. A very expensive cleaning. Yeah, some people have said that it might have been a PR stunt, this short clip, and it maybe is. But still, the fact that the manager is cleaning up is something that you will definitely see, or the leader is cleaning up is something that you will definitely see in the Dutch working environment. So now let's go back to your answer. The same advice and guidance. So we're talking now about manager in your day-to-day work. Huh? So respect, transparency, great. Yeah, so Christina, the same, clean up your own mess, great. Support, coaching, advice. All right, why I'm asking the question is, of course, to see if there is a bit of an alignment with what you would like to see coming from manager and what we see in the Dutch environment. And what we see is actually pretty much aligned with what you say. A manager is more or less, of course, somebody who has to make sure that together we're going to reach the vision, that we have a clear action plan. But the manager is the first amongst equals. So he's more or less, one of the guys. And he has his main role is to be a coach, a facilitator. He has to support and develop his team and make sure that, of course, he demonstrates authority when it's necessary, but he also shows compassion. So he is absolutely not expected to be the autocratic boss who decides and gives commands and top down gives direction on everything that we're going to do, and is going to tell you what to do. And depending on where you're coming from, that might be very surprising or very different. I work, for instance, with an organization where they have just merged French and the Dutch teams in a cluster. And the manager of the cluster is a French person, quite French. And I can tell you that there are a few friction between him and the Dutch team, because the Dutch are expecting to be involved, to be asked their opinion, to be consulted before decisions are made. Whereas he is, with his French background, used to decide things more or less on his own, to make the decision and to inform people afterwards. So of course that can create quite a bit of a tension here. So this egalitarianism, or this egalitarian aspect of the Dutch culture, reflects in the way we will manage people, but also in the way we are expected to behave as team members. So if the manager is one of the guy and more or less first among equal, as team members, what we are expected to be is to be completely responsible, to be assertive, to be proactive, to take initiative, and to be able to work independently, of course, because, we are equal. So why should we expect any, specific guidance or comment? So these are the first thing that we need to be very much aware of about how this egalitarian aspect of the culture reflects on the different roles that we have in the organizations. And there are, of course, some other things that are also reflection of this egalitarian aspect of the Dutch culture in the work environment. Just to name a few, the dress code. You probably have noticed, if you work within a Dutch organization, that nobody is really trying to show off or to distinguish himself with very nice clothes or very especially chic or to be overdressed. No, it's pretty casual. And this is another way to show, hey, look, we are all equal, so let's not try to be different here. So the casual dress style is one of the expression. The working space. I have a personal experience. So I started many years ago. I started in a Dutch company. And I had a job interview with, not with the manager, that was interesting. I had the job interview with the sales manager. And when I entered the small office, open space on my first day, I saw all these people dressed more or less the same, with jeans and sweater and sneakers, more or less the same age. And I was like, who is the boss? I had no clue, because the boss was sitting there with the rest of the team. So that was also for me something surprising. So also in the way the space is organized, very often, not always, but very often the boss is just sitting with the rest of the team. And this is also something that we have seen with the hybrid working, or no, actually not the hybrid working, the remote working, that very quickly in the Netherlands, we moved to home office because as we are all, we're all equal, we're all equally responsible, we trust people, and we don't really need to control that much. We trust that people will be responsible, and working from home, we trust they will do their work. So that was very easy to transition from working in an office to remote and home office. So that also is an expression of, can be seen as an expression of the egalitarian culture. And finally, the meeting interaction, a very important one. In a meeting, and we have seen that in your comments previously, we expect that everybody contributes, that everybody has an opinion and something to share, because, we are all equal. So not only the manager or the team leader are there to share. Everybody can have a valuable input to share during the meeting. And if you are not contributing, if you are being silent or passive, this might be interpreted as lack of interest or lack of engagement. So we have to be very careful with that. The way you behave in the meeting can also be misinterpreted sometimes. Transitioning to the next topic, you probably, if you work in a Dutch environment, notice that the meeting start on time and finish on time, right? So time is really important. And this is our next topic. Time is what we call linear. That means that time is almost something you can touch, almost something tangible. It's extremely important. And we call it, it defines our the structure of our day. It's a priority. And it is what we call linear. That means that we do one thing after the other, and we don't do different things at the same time. So you would really rarely in the Netherlands see someone who is in a meeting, typing on his computer, speaking on the phone with someone, and explaining something else to another person. That is not really a very common picture. We are focusing on one thing, we need to finish that thing, and then we can move on something else. And probably you have also, it's a bit of a joke with people who just moved to the Netherlands, that if you want to have a coffee with someone, you have to take out your agenda and look for in 2 weeks time, 3 weeks time, where there is some space. So time. So poll for you, and hopefully this time I can open it. Little situation. You have an important meeting that is about to start with your team. And just before it starts, your manager sends you a message and he asks you to call him. So what will you do? Will you tell your manager that you have a meeting and you can talk to him right now? You start your meeting on time and you call him back later. Or you call your manager as requested and you arrive late for your important team meeting. So let me open the poll. If I can. All right, so this time that should work. So let's see what you think about this one. You're very quick, guys. It's great. Let's have just a few more seconds to let everybody finish. Okay, great. I'm going to share the result with you so that you can see very interesting answers. All right, hope you can all see it. So, Andrea, please can you confirm that it's to be seen on the screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Great, thank you. So 86% answered that they would call the manager later, and 14% that they would actually pick up the phone immediately. Of course, we don't have any context here, so it's a bit difficult to give an answer. But still, considering what we just said before, your boss doesn't have any special privilege or any special, status. So why would you actually be late to an important meeting? Because your boss is asking you. And secondly, time is really important, right? So of course we don't have all the context, but probably the adequate behavior here would be to just send a message back to your boss and say, I'm going to call you back later. I first make sure that I start my important meeting on time. Okay. So time, very important. And that also, of course, has some influence on us as a team member, or team leader. For everyone, it has a very clear impact, is that we need to make sure to respect the deadline, to respect the planning is extremely important. When I started to work in the Netherlands, I worked in an organization where I was a bit of a bridge between France and the Netherlands. I was organizing some communication campaign for French clients in the Netherlands. So the clients were based in France, and I was working in the Netherlands with communication agency, magazines, websites. So I would get some input from my French partner and then send them to the magazines, the websites, everything. They would create a nice article or a nice advertisement for the Dutch market. First campaign, I was waiting for the input from my French clients. And of course, they were late. So many of them called me, hey, Alicia, sorry, we are still waiting for an approval. Is it okay if we deliver everything in 2 days? That me on the phone, you know, being nice, making sure that we preserve a good relationship. No problem, 2 days, you know. And expecting the same, you know, flexibility on the side of my Dutch partners, which surprisingly were not that flexible. So when I called, they said, no, it's in the planning today. So, you know, if you don't deliver today, probably it's going to be in the planning for the next issue of the magazine or for, you know, in a week time on the website. And I was like, oh my goodness. So this is where I realized, you know, we have two complete different perceptions of how we should respect time and how important time is. So I can tell you that the next time for the next campaign, what I did is that I created kind of a nice buffer in my planning with my French partners, so that we had at least 1 week buffer, so that when they would call me and say, oh, Alicia, we're late, I could tell them, no worries, no problem. And I was still on time to deliver with my Dutch partners. So this is how you have to bridge, you know, those kind of differences. So very important to be aware of that. Be punctual, responsive. If you see that you're not going to meet a deadline or you're not going to make it on the planning, make sure that you readjust your planning. That's okay. That can happen. Now, sometimes we are not able to be true to the original planning, but make sure that you readjust constantly and that you inform people is really important. Information, communication, very important. And this is our last topic, communication, of course, very important. Very important because, you know, first important way to connect with people, but also sometimes the best way to create frustration when we don't understand each other's communication style. So real quick in the chat box, how would you define the Dutch? Again, we are a bit generalizing here, but remember we are talking about trends and norms, not about all the individuals. How would you define the Dutch communication style in the chat box? Great, so I see frank, direct, open, honest. Oh, very nice. Direct, great. Effective, great. Okay, so we have here, that's, you're doing a good job, guys, because you're not being judgmental. Because sometimes I have more things like a bit too rude or too aggressive or too blunt, which is, of course, more judgmental. So you are now giving some, let's say, objective and neutral description of the communication style of the Dutch, which is great. And when we look at culture, what we see is that indeed we can imagine how we have, when it comes to communication, like a spectrum with opposite poles. And on one side, you have the direct or explicit, if you wish, and on the other side you have the indirect or implicit. And of course, the Dutch communication style is more on the very much on the direct side. And this is just an illustration of it. It's a picture I took at the corner of where I used to live in the Pipe, so in the center of Amsterdam. And after all these years in the Netherlands, I was still surprised by the directness of the communication. So you can see the translation, what it means. So it was a poster commercial for the bakery, and which literally says, if you want to poop well, I'll give you that bread. And I was like, wow, that's pretty direct. So indeed direct. And on the other side, we can have communication which is more indirect or more implicit. So if you look at the Dutch communication style, direct, what you see is that the message is in the word. We say what we mean, and the sender of the message is responsible for the message to come across. So this is why we are being so explicit, direct. The communication is instrumental, if you wish. On the other side of the spectrum, we have communication styles where we are more indirect or implicit, and this is where it can, between the two, can go really wrong, because here in the indirect communication, the message is not necessarily in the word. The message can be in the nonverbal, in the body language, in the situation, in the relationship between people. So you have to be able to guess, to read the air, to read between the lines. And here, the responsibility of understanding the message is no longer by the sender of the speaker, it's by the receiver. As a receiver, you're responsible for understanding what has been said. So you can imagine that between explicit and implicit speaker, there can be some kind of misunderstanding. So what do you think is the extreme risk that we take when we are an implicit or an indirect communicator, and we talk in an implicit or indirect way to an explicit communicator? What do you think is the utmost risk here? In the chat, please. So I repeat the question. Yeah, misunderstanding. Yes. This is, yeah. Absolutely, misunderstanding. And if we go a step further, it can even be that the explicit or direct communicator just don't understand that something was said, that he doesn't get the message at all, right? So that can happen. So as an implicit indirect communicator, you say something, but it just doesn't come across at all. So that can happen. All right. So what I would like to ask you now, it's a very important question, and you have been, I think, very, very objective, very neutral, which is great, and descriptive in your answers when I asked to describe the communication style of the Dutch. And it's, as I said, not always the case. And some people would more think about, rude, aggressive, brutal. Is all, if you have at some point this impression that it is a bit aggressive or too direct, is to ask yourself, but what is the good intention actually behind this type of communication, this explicit direct type of communication? What do you think is the good intention behind it? Why are we being explicit? I'm going to switch on the light. I'll let you think about it. What is the good intention behind being an explicit direct communicator? And I'll come back in a second after I've switched on the light. Yes, Andrea, the message is clear for everyone to avoid misunderstanding. Transparency, absolutely. Clarity, save time, all of this, avoid confusion. Exactly, clear communication. Efficiency, effectiveness is one of the, everything you said, and ultimately being effective, right? Exactly what Julian said, being effective, save time. All right. So here, this one question that you see on the screen is one question you can ask yourself when you find yourself in a situation where you are just like, why are they behaving that way? I just don't get it. I think this is really weird, or this is not good, or you feel upset. Just take a step back and ask yourself, hey, actually people are not born and raised to be jerks. So there might very well be a good reason or good intention behind that behavior that I don't really understand, or that's I don't feel very positively about. So this is a key question when we work across culture, and in your case, when we work with Dutch colleagues. And one of the situations where I see it creating a lot of frustration, of misunderstanding or irritation when it comes to direct communication on the work floor, it's feedback. So last poll for you guys. Who do you think we can give feedback to? And I will be specific here on the Dutch work floor, or in the Netherlands, let's say. So let's see. Yes, you're being quick again. This is great. Okay, 5 left. And we'll be complete. Okay, so let's see the results. All right, interesting. So, yeah, so the answers are a bit distributed between the different options, but basically based on everything we've said before, based on the fact that we are in an egalitarian culture, and based on the fact that communication is explicit and direct, feedback is actually something we officially or theoretically can give to everyone. And you might be very well surprised to get feedback from somebody who is one of your peer, and you think, hey, how come I'm getting feedback from that person and not only from a manager, depending on what you're used to. But here, feedback is something that we can give and receive from anyone, basically. And that may surprise some people, and that also may create some misunderstanding. Again, I'm going to stop the poll. I had, for instance, recently somebody in a training who was from Ireland, if I remember correctly, and he had to do a presentation for his work in front of his colleagues, and he made the presentation, and he told me at the end I was just like I was completely drained, because they all came with lots of feedback and some critics, and he took it very personally. He said, I just felt it was on me. And so I asked him, so why do you think, actually? You take a step back, ask yourself, what could be the good intention behind it? And he started to think. I was like, actually, maybe it was just that they wanted me to be better, to improve what I was doing. And most of the time, that's the real reason behind feedback, is that people just want to help you to improve and be better. So it's what we call over here a gift. So when this young Irishman, when he realized that, he said, hey, I feel much better about it. And now, I'll be actually more relaxed next time I'll present, because I will just realize that getting feedback is nothing personal. It's just a way to help me improve. And I usually say to people, actually, that if you don't get feedback, this is the moment you should start to worry, because it may mean that people don't see any space for improvement, or so better to get feedback, even if sometimes they feel a bit harsh, than not get any feedback. Tying that back to our role and responsibilities as team members, that means that we are expected to give and to receive feedback, not only for people who are reporting to us, but also people who are our peers, and also people who are above us. So if you see something that you think can be improved or done differently on your manager side, don't hesitate to share that and give constructive feedback. So openness, transparency, direct communication are and sharing information also, which is also part of being open when it comes to communication, are key elements of good interaction on the work floor. And finally, we have 3 minutes left. I would just like to finish. So we've talked about 3 topics. We've talked about the egalitarian culture. We have talked about time. I've talked about communication and how that all influence the way we work together with our Dutch colleagues. If we take it a little bit broader, we have talked about our Dutch colleagues, but maybe you're going to work, or you work in an environment where you have Dutch colleagues, but you also have colleagues from other cultures. And that's very likely, actually, because we have so many people from so many different cultures in the Netherlands. What do you think are the key skills to be able to navigate effectively cultural differences? In the chat box, please. Respect, being open-minded, great, accepting differences, curiosity, absolutely, understanding, reflective mind, yeah, being reflective, great, empathy, all of this extremely important, yes. So all those soft skills that we have not necessarily learned at school are, of course, extremely important. And I would add also self-awareness, because it starts with knowing ourselves. When we know ourselves, we know better what is going to surprise us about the others. And I see more coming in. This is absolutely great. Patience, not being judgmental, all of this. Thank you very much, everyone, for this interactive session. We have 1 minute left. This is not a lot, but would like to see if you have any questions that you would like to ask before we wrap up. Any question in the chat, or if somebody wants to come on the microphone. Nope. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, I see. Can you say something about where these Dutch cultural values and beliefs come from historic? So it's a very good question, and it's a combination of all that you said, Maya. So history, geography, religion, all this has an influence on culture, and it's difficult to, point one thing. It's a combination of different factors. So of course, when you know more about the history or the geography of, especially in the Netherlands, the fact that the country has been gained over water, this has tremendously influenced the way people interact with each other, especially the egalitarian aspect is very much related to that. So it's always interesting to be curious about the history as well, to understand the culture. Any other questions? How to tell it to Dutch colleague and convince them that what they have been doing is wrong, but need to be changed ASAP. So the question here, Bahadir, is what is wrong? So if it's really wrong, what do you think? Based on everything we have discussed, being explicit and transparent might be the best way. Being very much aware that we need to have some evidence and some facts and figures to support what we are talking about is very important. And of course, there is a very thin line, and I'm happy you asked that question, Bahadir, between being direct and being aggressive or being attacking. So we have to make sure that we respect that very thin line. We can be direct and being respectful, but we have to be very careful here. Okay. Hope I answered the question in a way, Bahadir.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Being mindful of the time, just want to let you know, guys, that this was really, it's 45 minutes, so we cannot dive very deep, but hopefully a few practical things that you can use from tomorrow on, hopefully.